Right, in this video I'd like to go through a couple of the features in the file menu, in particular the ones that relate to importing existing images. So obviously we can create new images, and we'll skip that here because we want to open an existing one. So there's an open and a couple of import options and a few more, and let's have a look at this one here. Opening allows you to use the Windows interface to navigate with Windows Explorer through your file system. So if you have a particular area, a particular folder containing the image you want to load, you can go and grab that, and it will recognize it in a number of different formats. We use ImageMagick for any format we don't understand ourselves directly, but we also have a default Targa built in ourselves, and then also a layered format of our own. But many other formats, probably over 60 different formats, can be loaded in here too. So let's say I'm loading this image here. This one's a JPEG, and it will of course replace the existing image. Here's your last chance to change your mind, and OK that, and there you go. So I can zoom in with my scroll button on my mouse, going up and down on my scroll button, or you can zoom in with a couple of the navigation tools here. There's a little hand. If you click and drag from there, it moves the window around, it moves the painting around, and then you have a zoom also, and you can zoom in and out. Alright, so that was one thing. Now maybe sometimes I'd like to work with multiple images, so I'd like to store this one here in the image, and in the image menu we have an option called store image. Alright, and so with that you'll grab basically a snapshot of that image, and it's really nice because you can do some work on it, you can mess it up or make it better, whichever way you look at it, and then you can store that one as well. And then at some point you might want to go back to the original, right? So you have a snapshot of it right here. You just click that, and then you snapshot, click this one, and it restores that. So you can use that in many different ways. Another way you can use that too is, by the way, this little icon in the lower left corner of the stored image. You click that, and it turns this thing into a color palette. So now you actually pick the color with that. So you can grab some bright colors and paint with that, and you can go grab some green colors and paint with those, and get some dark colors and paint with that. So this image, whatever photograph you loaded and then stored, you can turn immediately into a color picker. Alright, let's go and restore that one more time. Hold on, out of the color picker, there you go, click it, and maybe we'll keep a snapshot of this one here. But let's go back to our menu that we had started with, and that was the file menu. And let's look at another way to open an image. There's a couple of import options, and there's actually a few more here that go into the plugins area with a variety of import tools. Some of them, like the browser, are also available right here. So let's have a look at this one here. What the browser does is it gives you another way to navigate through your file system. The first time you load this, it may take a little while because it builds a list of icons. All of these thumbnails are being created and incidentally stored in a subfolder in the temp folder of Dog Waffle. So you may need to wait a few seconds for that to complete, especially if you're looking at a folder that contains hundreds and hundreds of images. So typically if you have a digital camera and you have lots of photographs that you took, and you have them all in that same folder. So typically here I'm looking at one folder, there's another one here, there's another one here. Maybe I'm going to go for some planets. Not really a whole lot here, there's just one. So when you double click that will load and replace the image, and there you go. And so this one's actually a very large image. Let me close that. I mean, you can explore this. There's a variety of other file manipulation tools here. I'm going to close this at this point, and then again zoom. And now there's another zoom, which is like if the image is very big, you want to see the whole image, you can squeeze it to be contained in the window. So click like that, right? And then 100%, and then there's again the magnifier here, so you can zoom in on that. All right, so that gives us already two ways to load an image, and there's more. There's the batch browser, and then there is also, and in fact the batch browser I believe also uses the ImageMagick environment. So that's yet another mechanism to load it. Oops, hold on, I stand corrected. That's the other one I was looking for. That's not using ImageMagick. That one actually uses our own import mechanism, a couple of different file formats that it supports, And so let's say this actually right now I'm looking at the folder where my PD Howler is installed, right? That's on the program files, x86 version, since I'm on a 64-bit OS version of Windows 7, and then down into Howler. Let's see medias, for instance, or patterns there. Let's go into patterns. There's a couple of pattern images there. And so you can use that to rename. This is a batch browser, so there's also rename capabilities, batch renaming, batch conversion, and that sort of things. And if I double click this one here, let's see what happens. Of course it will offer to load that, but what I'd like to do is cancel that and store this one here first. So I'm going to grab a stored image copy, there you go, just like I did earlier, of this image here. Now this one was a much smaller image, so if I shift control and drag this around, you see that it actually stored it into the upper left corner there, where it fit quite easily. So if I wanted to actually replace it, scale to buffer is another option, and then that way it fits into the entire image. Or you can also have it replace, and that would be this one here, replace existing image. Alright, so let's go back to the what's the tool we were using here, the batch browser. There is one more, and that's the one down here, the batch. Oh, there's a batch process. We'll talk about this one a little bit later. But there's also the general file converter. And with the general file converter, you can load an image and also send it from back and forth. So it goes both ways. You can load something from a file. Let's go and in fact it can use the batch browser to navigate through that. So we've seen this just a few seconds ago. And or you can load, you can open a file from through the regular interface in Windows and navigate through that. So here are the patterns that we have in the installation folder of Dogwaffle. I'm going to grab this one here. All right, and this one's a BMP. Now what it does is it shows you the BMP files, but you can actually ask it to show you other file formats as well. And so this is what the formats are that it can recognize: GIF, JPEG, EXIF also, OXIF, and then PNG and TIFF format. So there's a variety of formats that this can support. Let's go and grab this little plaid or weave pattern, open that, and what you see is it didn't load it into Dogwaffle, it still keeps it in the file converter, the general file converter. So at this point you might want to perhaps look at it and do a few things like adjust color, resize it, get some image information, or connect to Dogwaffle and send it over. Right, so this is basically sort of a gateway to and from Dogwaffle. Whenever you have an image in Dogwaffle, you can also go, hey, let's go to the image and import it from PD. So import it where? Well, into the file converter, right? The general file converter here grabs a copy, connects to Dogwaffle and grabs a copy of it. Now this is a very big image, and maybe you want to see the whole thing, so you can say zoom to fit, right? And then that way it will zoom it to fit the image inside the file converter. It doesn't resize it, lose details and stuff like that. It just shows it to you small enough that you can see it all. You can get some details about the file converter here. And there's a few other options like copy paste to the clipboard as well. So that's another feature that's worth exploring. If you have images that you copied from another image application or another program, if you copied that from the edit menu into the clipboard, then you can grab it here, you can paste, or you can copy stuff that's here into the clipboard and send it over to the other applications. So lots of ways to communicate with other images and other programs and other environments. And then of course at some point you might use that also to send images back into. In fact, let's see if we can do adjust color here. Let's make it a little bit red, reduce the blue level, and green as well. Alright, so we have a very different appearance now on our image. Let's make it even more saturated. There you go, and okay that. So now this time we have a very different looking image, and let's say this is the one I want to use. So again, I'm sending the image to Dogwaffle, right? I'm going to connect and export to Dogwaffle, to PD. So essentially consider the general file converter as like something like like a gateway, right? Kind of connecting or bridging the gap between your file system and Dogwaffle. Here's an application that, or a tool that can be used to bring it in between and also allow you to resize it and look at it very large so that you can really see the details before you decide if you want to save it or if you want to load it. And saving you can in a variety of different formats. So again, now I don't recommend saving it into the folder where Dogwaffle is installed. This is where I am currently. But what you want to do is recognize what formats this can export to. And again, there's the BMP, GIF, JPEG, EXIF, PNG, and TIFF. So these are the formats that this can support. There are, of course, there's a native format, the one that Dogwaffle uses internally by default, and that would not be saved through the general file converter. That would instead be saved directly from the file menu right here under save. Alright, so when you save that, that also gives you a variety of choices here. The main format, the default format is Targa, and so we call it default Targa. And when you use that, it will also ask you if you want to save the alpha channel. So it will, let's say if I'm going to Digicam, that's a safe place to save them to, okay? So it's going to ask you, do you want to save it in 8-bit color grayscale, 24-bit RGB? That's the usual format to use, but you may occasionally have a selection mask in the alpha channel and you want to save it as well. So in that case, you would go with 32-bit RGB A for alpha. Now, if you don't want to save it in that format, you could save it in a variety of other formats, and one of them here is the BMP, bitmap, JPEG, and in that case in JPEG we'll ask you for the quality of the compression you want. PNG, or most of these formats, it will save the alpha channel as well if there is a selection in effect, right? If there is a selection mask, like in BMP format, PNG in particular also, it will give you that transparent background around the selected parts. PSD is there, I'm not sure. I don't think this one saves the layers. We just save one layer at a time. Targa is kind of redundant, you might think, but it's actually using a different mechanism in our default Targa. So this one will not ask you for 24-bit or 32-bit options. This one uses the same export as PNG, JPEG, BMP, TIFF. Those are formats exploited through the ImageMagick. Through the ImageMagick convert utility. And we have one more, which is the OpenEXR, and then finally the layered format, and that's the one you will want to use. It's an internal layered format, internal to Dogwaffle, and that's the one you would want to use if indeed you have multiple layers in your image. Now, so that's it. Let's say save it in JPEG, for instance, and I'll call it not this name. I don't want to overwrite this image, so test and nuke this. There you go. And JPEG is the format, so like I said, it will ask you for the quality of the compression here, AD being the default, and that's something you can actually tune. You can make it a different value if you want to. Where do you do that? That will go into the window settings, right? And in the settings area you have a variety of choices, including under the GUI you have the saving default JPEG quality. So if you think 80 is just fine, just leave it as that. But if you needed a higher quality, less distortion, or less noise, make this a higher value. You can go all the way to 100. If you need the images to be smaller file sized and you don't mind if they get a little bit granular, grainy, noisy, and that sort of things, then just bring it down to maybe 75 or 70. I wouldn't go below 70. Beyond that, it's going to look a little bit crummy. Alright, so I think that's that for today's quick demo of some of the main features for loading and saving. We have one more. We'll look at that in a different video. That's the batch process to convert, and also the scan and print utilities. That's not really what we want to do, right? We want to paint after all, so we'll do these in a separate video.